Hi, everybody. This is Jennifer Forberry back again with another episode of the 29-Minute Mom. And today I am super, super excited because I have the author on of one of my newest favorite books, and her name is Kari Kampakis. So, welcome to the show, Kari.
Thanks for having me.
I am obsessed with this book right here. So it's called Love Her Well 10 Ways to Find Joy and Connection with Your Teenage Daughter. I read it cover to cover. I told all my friends with teenage daughters to get this book, and I can't wait to share it with our audience today. So I am super, super happy that you decided to join us.
Yes, well, I'm excited to talk about it. That's one of my favorite subjects.
Yes. I mean, so you're the mom of what, four teenage girls?
Yes, well, actually, three teenagers and one preteen. My
Okay,
youngest is
gotcha.
11, so she's almost there.
So just to let the audience know, you're a author, you're a blogger, you're a national speaker, you're from Birmingham, Alabama, and you have four daughters. You've written several books about teenage girls, and you've spoken to churches and youth groups all over the country. You have a dog named Lola and a husband named Harry.
Yes.
I love it.
Poor Harry, surrounded
Poor
by
Harry.
needs. Yes.
So I don't even, this is just so exciting. So my daughter she just turned 19, and we literally just moved here into college in Florida last week. So this whole teenage daughter thing is just quite a discussion. And I know every mom listening that has a teenage daughter, you're kind of out there right now, always questioning yourself. And so this book, I'm telling you, the reason why I love this book so much, Carrie, is because it's faith-based, and it's coming from a mom who is living it, has lived it, is you're just so raw and honest. And I really love that about your writing style.
Oh, well, thank you. And it's funny, and it helps me to hear that because I almost didn't write the book for that reason. And I mentioned that in the intro that probably within a few weeks, I mean, I had this vision for that book. I was like, there's such a need for it. Someone had actually suggested it at a speaking event because it was a talk I'd given. And she came up afterward and she told me that needs to be a book. And it was just like a light bulb went off in my head. Like, she's totally right. I can really make this a book. This talk always gets good feedback from moms. It allows me to be really honest about the mistakes I've made in hopes of helping other moms. So I had a clear vision, which, as a writer, that's such a gift to know
Yeah.
what you're writing and to have that direction. But truly, within like 2 or 3 weeks of writing this book, one of my daughters and I went into this season of just locking horns again. And of course, when I'd started, we were all in a good place. But, it was that season that I was like, I don't need to be writing this book. And I'm not an expert. And who am I to be giving advice to anyone because I don't have it figured out. And as soon as you think you have it figured out, you enter a new season and, things get tumultuous again. So, but I really had to do some soul searching and praying. And I came to the conclusion that, that the enemy doesn't want me, doesn't want any of us to be putting these faith-based messages out there. And, that's life. And I realized that so many of the moms reading this book would be in the exact same place that I was then. And, that was what was going to keep me humble as I wrote it, and also writing it from a place of compassion. And hey, I've been there too. And we all have those ups and downs in any relationship, but that's okay. The point is to work through them. So, but it has been really refreshing to have a lot of moms tell me, I'm so glad you didn't wait to write this book. 20 years later, when you feel like you can look back and give the advice, I'm so glad you wrote it now when you're in the trenches with us.
Yes. And I love that you mentioned that in the introduction, that it's a very brave book to write. There's not a lot of them out there because I think moms want to pretend that we have it all figured out. And we
Hmm.
don't want to admit our flaws. So one of the things I want to kind of start, there's just so many things I want to jump in. I want to make sure we have time for them. But one of the big things I think that a lot of my girlfriends and I discussed this book was the fact that how do you not take things personal? Because we're actually doing a Bible study right now called Mom Set Free. So it was like we were doing this Bible study, we're all reading your book, and we were having these deep conversations. And that was one of the things that a lot of us were struggling with, because as a mom, you love your daughter so much and you'll do anything for her, but then you're dealing with her moods and her ups and downs, and when they lash out, it's really hard not to take it personal. So what's your advice for that?
Oh, yes. I think, and this has been one of my big messages in recent years, especially as I now have three teenage daughters, and chances are somebody's in a mood or kind of dumping on mom or whatever. is that we really have to do things to keep us strong as moms. And I really believe that we need to have strong relationships and really sources of support, whether it's our husband or especially our girlfriends, because my husband is awesome, but he does not understand what it's like to be a mom like my friends do. And, an example I can think of was there was one night a few years ago, and I just felt like I was being beaten up by 3 different daughters. They were all stressed, they were all taking out on me. And it's so hard because we do give so generously, and, we're giving and giving, and to not feel that love reciprocated, it's really hard to not take it personally. But we had a Bible study that night in my neighborhood, and I almost didn't go because I was just feeling sorry for myself and just wasn't in the mood. But I made myself go, and during that hour that I was there, it's like my heart totally turned. I forgot about what was going on in my home. I just was surrounded by these women of faith. We had the best conversations. It was just a really real and vulnerable environment. And I just felt like I was nurturing my soul as a woman, just almost forgetting myself as a mother for a while, but just nurturing myself as a person and really just filling up on those friendships. And that really equipped me to come back home and be strong enough to handle whatever might happen with my children. So that
Mhm.
was a lesson to me, is just to really, it might be running or, taking dance classes or doing art classes, spending time with people who support us and build us up, but just anything that helps us stay strong, that gives us that affirmation we're looking for when we're not necessarily getting it from our family.
So true. And one of the big things I learned from your book is just the fact that we can rely on God. We don't have to have all the answers. There's sometimes when we can just, say, "Here you go, God. I can't do this right now. I'm too emotional. I'm too tired. I'm too stressed out." And He will come through. And that's okay to kind of put that burden on Him.
Yes. And I feel like I have done that a lot this past year, especially just with Corona and the stress of trying to parent during uncertain times like this. That it's so comforting to know that we do have a God that loves us more than anyone. He loves us even though he knows every flaw about us, and that we can just dump it on him. Say, I can't, you just untangle this for me. This is the
Hmm.
mess. You give me the wisdom. I'm just going to give you this burden. And he willingly takes it. And it really has, I feel like, strengthened my faith this year, having those moments where I'm like, nobody understands me or how stressed out I am except for you, God. And, and I feel like that has done a lot of good things for my faith. And I'm sure a lot of people would say the same thing after a year like this.
It's been a really hard year because we're dealing with our children's disappointment. It breaks our heart to see their disappointment. I know last year my daughter was a senior when this all started, and then the first semester of college was completely ruined. And it's just heartbreaking. And we're stressed and we're sad, and they are too. So it is a lot, but it's also a good time to show our children how to persevere, because many kids out there, this was like the hardest thing they've been through as of today. And so I think it's been a good lesson to teach my daughter to keep stretching herself, even though she might be afraid or uncomfortable.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think that that is one thing I've really learned, especially as a mom of 4 daughters, because I started off thinking I had to be this perfect role model, and I didn't want them to see any of my flaws or see me, at a low point or looking weak. And I've realized as they get older that I really connect with them better when I'm honest. Like, I'm struggling too. This is how I'm handling my disappointments, and having those conversations, because all they see around them is the perfection on Instagram, or these achievements, and they're just surrounded by success stories, and that can make them feel really alone in their failures or their disappointments sometimes. And so just to know that they have, parents who are human and willing to share that humanity, and really we're just all really journeying together and learning from each other, I think that gives a lot of relief to them, and it really can help build the relationship.
Yeah, 100%. I want to talk about on page 61, where you say today's trend of, quote, buddy parenting is largely a response to authoritarian parenting our generation grew up with. While our parents had more control, there wasn't always a strong emotional connection, and today's parents desire more connection and closeness. Let's talk about for a second how the fact that this is the kind of generation we're raising, with the phones and the access to the entire world, we can't have control over every little thing. And there's so many things basically um, trying to compete with our time and the attention to our children. A lot of parents are saying that because we were raised in a different time, those types of parenting skills don't apply to us today. So I find that this buddy parenting thing is a real thing because we don't want to ruin the relationship with our kids. So we're kind of always balancing, being, having rules and earning respect with being close and tight. So can we talk about that for a second?
Yes, yeah, you raised a great point that, and it's funny, I've had this conversation in another Zoom call too with a small group, that there's a lot more competing for the attention of kids today besides their family. And we've talked about that, and they're surrounded by so many negative influences, and why that is so important to be a positive influence in our homes. And that this, the importance as they get older, that we go from that position of control to really a position of influence in their lives. But we're not going to influence them if we don't have a relationship, if they don't like us. And so it is such a hard thing to balance. And, we're constantly asking ourselves, is this a battle I'm willing to fight? We got to give somewhere. But yeah, I know. And, even with my girls, sometimes I worry about being too strict, and then I worry about being too lenient. And
Mhm.
with every child, it's different. You kind of figure out your system with one child, and then the next child's completely different. And so I do think it just takes a lot of prayer and, just knowing your child and kind of knowing how you do keep that relationship. But and what I also try to remember is, I think sometimes, if I'm not setting these boundaries, if I'm not doing things like making them take their vitamin D in the morning, which they always fight me on, but if I'm not doing it, nobody else is going to do it.
Mhm.
And so it's hard. And I think that's what's hard about being a mom, is we don't want to be that one nagging or, telling them to do what they need to do. But we also know long term, there are certain things that are going to be healthier for them. But I have learned too with kids, the good thing about this generation is I do think they're smarter than we were at their age in a lot of ways. I mean, they're a lot more worldly and just aware of things earlier than we were. And so I have found that really logic and reason, especially as they get older, really works well as we explain, like, this is why I have the rules that we have. This is what I'm afraid of. And then I share a lot of stories, when I was growing up or when I was in college, I met this guy or this happened, or I just saw this on the news today, kind of explaining why we're not trying to give these rules and boundaries to be mean. It's just we're trying to protect them. And that's our ultimate goal, is to help protect them and ensure they have the future we want them to have.
Mhm.
But it doesn't always fly over with a 16-year-old, especially when all their friends are getting to do something that they can't.
Oh,
But
yes.
uh,
I think the biggest thing that is not working in our favor right now is the electronics, is the phones.
mhm,
It makes me super sad to hear that so many teenage girls are struggling from anxiety and insecurity and depression because, it's basically a constant comparison game. And, my girlfriends and I have said we can't imagine growing up in a time where if we weren't invited to a party, we would actually see pictures of that party and our friends attending on our phone. So
mhm.
the one thing that really is the biggest struggle is they're addicted to their phone. They're addicted to seeing what everybody else is doing. How have you really, I mean, what kind of rules or what have you learned in your house to kind of not let them not get to a situation where it's running their life?
Right. One thing my husband did was set, there's something you can set on the phones where you turn it off at a certain time at
Yep.
night. And so he's done that. And, one thing with our house too is we've always said that two of my things are, one, it's our phone. We paid for it. So I have the right to just pick it up and just scroll through it anytime I want. I'm probably not as good at doing that as I should be, but we have that right. And then
Mhm.
I also talk a lot about keeping things in the light. You shouldn't have anything on there that I don't need to see.
I
But
love
yeah, and
that.
it's the time that I think, especially with TikTok, it seems like every child has certain social media that they like more than others. But
Mhm.
with TikTok, I mean, they can stay on there all day long watching videos, and
Mhm.
teenagers really thrive on novelty, and that's all novelty because it's these 30-second videos. They just sit there and watch. So, something I try to do with my girls, I always point it back to health, whether it's physical health, mental health, emotional health. Sometimes I just try to think of a way to, like, what's a way I can say, "Hey, you know what? Why don't you put down your phone for a while? I've noticed you've been on your phone a lot lately." And just trying to help guide them in those ways, that I notice that you've been on your phone more in the past couple of days than normal. And why don't we put it down and we'll go do something else? And so, but
Mhm.
it's hard, especially, my kids don't have a lot of hobbies at home besides being on their phone. I do have one daughter who started baking cakes, another one who's making these sweatshirts. So I'm trying to buy things. Another one has a sewing machine. She'll sometimes sew, but just trying to find alternatives for them to do at home besides get on their phone, because it's such an
Mhm.
easy out.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of parents saying that lately. Are your kids in school full time right now, or are they virtual?
They are in school full time, except for they're out. My older ones are out on Wednesday. That's an off day that they work from home.
Okay. And how old's
What
your
about your
oldest?
kids? She is a senior, so she's going to college next year.
Yes. So then you can write a book about letting go.
Oh, Lord. I mean, I'm trying to already. I think it'll take me about 5 years to figure this out. I mean,
It's crazy. So
uh,
yes, we could have another conversation next year because the senior year leading into the freshman college year has been quite a journey. There's so many emotions they're going through and so many emotions we're going through at the same exact time. And you think,
mm,
I can never let them go. How will I get through, this next stage? And then you start to get through it step by step. It is, talk about praying. Oh my gosh. I don't know if you pray any more than when you send your child off to college.
I know when you were saying I should write a book on that, that was my thought. It would have to be a book on prayer because that's about all you have. I mean, is
That
that,
really is all you have. It's just trusting in God. And I'm just thankful for that I have trust in him, because otherwise I would
mhm,
drive myself nuts.
I know.
I want to talk about on page 40. This is profound, really. You wrote, I often think of who I hope my daughters will be at age 40, and I work backward to ask, what can I do today to cultivate those qualities? I remember these words from a youth pastor, Cameron Cole. We aren't parenting for our 16-year-old to like us. We're parenting for our 40-year-old to respect us. I love that. How, what are some ways you have implemented to earn that respect so that maybe they're not really happy with you in the moment, but the important thing is when they're an adult, they're going to look back and have respect for you.
Right. And that was really inspired by some friends that I have that, would tell me when I was 28, I looked at my parents' divorce in this way. But then when I was 40, I looked at it this way. And it's so interesting to see that somebody that's healthy minded and growing in a healthy direction, that as they get older, they're going to see the truth of a situation. And so I tell that to my friends who are going through a hard divorce or a hard time. Like your child's life is not ruined. You just keep doing the right thing, and one day they're going to have so much respect for you because they're going to look back and realize how hard that was. And so I just try to think about that with my kids, that okay, what they think they want at 16 is not necessarily what they're going to respect me for at 40. And so I think too that the way I parent them is going to probably influence the way they parent their children. And so I just think about, I think just being strong and just really not just following what everybody is doing, just thinking what is best for my child. And it's hard, like I said, especially when all their friends are doing something, to be the only one or to say, God, should I let them do this or not? But I like again, I always go back to if I'm not the one setting boundaries, then who will do that? And so whether it's boys or going out or curfews or your stand on alcohol, just those things. I just think that our kids are not going to understand right now. But my big thing, like I said, I always go back to health. I was like, I probably read too much, after reading The Teenage Brain and reading what, early drinking early and drugs early, what it does to the brain and how much harder addiction is to overcome, when you start early in life. And, I tell my kids that I was like, I hate this, but a lot of the kids who are making mistakes right now, they're going to have lifelong problems because nobody's stopping them. And
Mhm.
so, you can be that friend to somebody that, just you've got to look at something on the big picture level. And I know when I wrote my first book, yeah, I did a lot of at first in the first chapter, like in 20 years, you'll think this, in 20 years, you'll think this. And my editor told me, teenagers can't think 20 years ahead. They're maybe 5 years ahead, but they're really thinking about Friday night. And that
Yes.
stuck with me. I mean, it's kind of like now I'm dealing with the sunspots from laying out in the 80s and, getting the band to Soleil tan. But I'm like, I didn't care about the sun damage I was doing in my teenage years because I just wanted to look good on the weekend.
Mhm.
But now I'm like, oh, why did I not wear sunscreen? Why did I not do those things? But you're not thinking about, what life's going to be like when you're 40 or 50.
No, and that's one of the things I keep having to stop myself sometimes to remind myself that, her brain isn't fully developed, so she's not going to have the same awareness that I have. And so I think sometimes we feel like they do seem so mature, but they still have so much to learn, and letting them,
Mhm.
make the mistakes. I think is, one of the things I've learned as being a teenage or a mom of a teenager is two things. Number one, don't overreact, because their opinion and what they want to do and maybe what they say changes day to day. So
Yes.
one day they'll say, I'm going to go do this and be that. And it's like, it could be the same. It could stick with them, or it could change week to week, month to month, year to year. So it's really important to not overreact. And the second thing is to sometimes just let them learn the hard lessons. I've told my
Mhm.
daughter before, I wish I could just wave my magic wand and you wouldn't have to go through these hard lessons. But I also remind her when she, is going through a breakup or she is dealing with anxiety, that this is life and we all went through it and it's okay. It helps us grow.
Right, exactly. It's so hard, and when we look back on our lives, those really are the times that helped us grow and become better people, or the hard things that we went through, but you don't
Mhm.
want it for your children. It's so hard to watch it.
Yeah, it's hard. The other thing is when they do start getting older, you wrote on page 169 that when your oldest girls became teenagers, you started to pull away and realized you'd wrap your life around them. Your instinct was to become clingy, but that drove them away. That is so true. I think we go
Yeah.
from these little girls our entire life, and everything we do is about them. And then they start to get older and they have to find their way, and we have to stop and take a step back. I find that, this term helicopter parenting, I laugh because my friends and I, when I was sending my daughter to college, both me and my husband flew down, spent 5 days near the campus in case you need anything. Whereas when I went to college, I drove myself from New York to Florida by myself and moved myself in the dorm.
Right.
Completely different, way of parenting.
I know,
So
that is exactly my story too. I'm like, I don't remember. I think they helped me move in, but I'm not sure.
I was literally saying, as we were making all these plans to go down to Florida, I said to my friends, nobody helped me move in. Whatever fit in my car went, and I drove myself 24 hours there. And when I wanted to come home, I drove myself 24 hours back. I think, my cousin or someone would drive with me, but that was it. My parents didn't do it. And we were just hanging around the city for 5 days, like we're only a phone call away.
I know, I
you
know.
know, we
And
want to make
I
sure
do
you're
think
settled.
yes, I will be the same way. I mean, my daughter's going 2 hours away, and that's selfishly, I'm just so excited she'll be close to home because I'm planning in my head, "Oh, I can do a quick little lunch. I can just
Mhm.
drive down there for, once a month or who knows."
You
But,
will too. What the first semester, our daughter was only an hour and a half away, and it was a good way for all of us to start getting used to this new normal. Um, but now it's funny because since her semester was just so sad because of the rules here in New York State and just not having a normal college experience. People have said, "How are you going to handle her being so far away?" And the funny thing is if she's happy, I'm happy.
oh,
Um,
wow.
Much easier to deal with when, they're having a good experience.
Yes, yeah, and I think that shows a lot of maturity from a parental standpoint. Like, that's what I have to remember when mine is I was like, "If I'm feeling sad and she's happy, then that's my problem." Like,
Mhm.
that's me making her moving away about me, and it's really about her spreading her wings and becoming the person she's meant to be. And so
Yep.
it really it can really make us focus on ourselves and how we're feeling, but I'm trying
Mhm.
to remember, "Okay, I want what's
Yeah.
best for her."
I'm not gonna lie, you're gonna bawl your eyes out when you
Oh,
drive away.
oh, I know.
You're
I'm
gonna
not
feel like
looking
your
forward to
heart is
that.
ripped out. It's unbelievable. But
Oh,
you do get through it. And I think with every stage of parenting, God somehow, we think before we get to that stage we'll never make it through. And then somehow God, he, makes a way. So
I
it's
know. I
quite
wanna
a
cry just
journey.
thinking about it right now. Oh,
So with this book, and really just want to make sure everybody remembers what it's called. If you don't see the video of this, it's called Love Her Well, 10 Ways to Find Joy and Connection with Your Teenage Daughter. For me, when I was looking for a book like this, it was very important for me to have a faith-based book because this is how I parent. The thing about just parenting girls in general is if we can get them, we don't have all the answers. And you mentioned before, just showing that we're not perfect and being okay with that. But if we can get them to rely on God and to follow Jesus, then really that's the most important thing we can do as parents because he has so much more um, impact on their life than we ever will if we've done our job. So one of the things that, I will say this first off as a piece of encouragement to everybody listening, and then I want to hear your input is, when I sent my daughter away to college, you hope and pray you've done all you can to point them to Jesus. What happened with my daughter is she went through a really bad breakup her first semester. It's coronavirus. There's hardly any kids in the dorms. There's very strict rules. She's an athlete. She can't hang out with other people without getting in trouble, all the things. So she got really, really sad and depressed. And one of the things that made me super proud during a year that I was questioning my parenting all the time is that she was going to her Bible every night. And I had to sit back and think, okay, well, at least I did that, right? What is your opinion? What can we tell the moms listening when they're struggling? And maybe they're just listening to this and they're like, well, I haven't really done that yet. I haven't really pointed my daughter to Christ. Where can they start when they're teenagers?
Right. I think like what you said, just, having that Bible, sending the Bible with them, finding a good devotional. I get a lot of questions from moms whose girls are going to college. What's a good devotional? I really love this one called All in All by Sophie Hudson. It's she's at a high school, works at a high school. She knows teenage girls. But it might be something that even if your child isn't really a faithful person, that having it on their nightstand when they're going through a hard day, they might just pick it up and actually find it pretty helpful. And it might be that little seed that gets them hooked and makes them read it every night. So I think that, and then again, going back to prayer, I really think, I'm already praying for the people that my daughter will meet in college. I
Oh,
prayed for
yes.
her roommate. I'm praying for the girls that she'll meet, the guys that she'll meet. I pray that if she's in a bad situation, somebody with a good head on their shoulders will be there.
Mhm.
And I also pray that if there's something I haven't taught my children, then let them find friends who their parents did teach them that
Ooh, that's
thing,
a good one, Kari.
right? Because I know I've missed the boat on some things, but I
Yeah.
know that there are other parents that that's their strength, that they equip their child. And, God really does work all these good things together. So I really pray for that. And then I think about how God worked in my life, especially in the college years. And it's so funny. I grew up in Tuscaloosa, went to the University of Alabama. I didn't plan to go
Nice.
to church in college because I'd gone to church my entire life. I kind of felt like this is my freedom. I'm not going to do it. But within my first 2 weeks on campus, I went to a party. I met a guy. He was just a good friend, but we hit it off. He was fun. We realized we are both Catholic, and so he was like, "You want to go to church tomorrow?" And so when somebody you don't know asks you that, I was like, I didn't really feel like I could say no. So that got me going to church the first time. I ended up loving the college priest, the campus priest. He was just made to be college campus. And and then one of my sorority sisters, same thing. We pledged and really hit it off. And she asked me the same question about a week later. Hey, I'm going to church tonight. Do you want to go with me? So it got me going back again. And it's funny, I look back now, it seemed like such a coincidence at the time. And now I realize, was that a product of my dad's prayers for me? Was that something that God did because my dad was praying for my faith and my faith
Mhm.
journey? That I just
Yeah.
think God can work in so many ways in our children's lives and especially in the people around them. And there are so many negative influences out there, but I just pray that whatever they need, whether it's something they hear from a teacher or a friend or whoever they're meeting, that God is going to work in their life in a way that we can't.
I love that. One of the prayers I always pray, and it works every time too, is, if my kids get into a relationship or a friendship, I always pray, if God, this is not your will, God, please, end this relationship. And it's worked every single time. And I feel like the number one thing that we can teach our kids is to pray for God's will in their life. Because I always tell my kids,
Yes.
God knows more than we do, and God sees, your future. So just pray for his will.
Yes, that's so true. And
Yeah.
it's funny, my dad always tells my girls that he's 85 and he's always told them, "Don't pick out your husband, ask God to pick out your husband for you." He goes, "If you pick him out yourself, you're gambling, but
That
you
is
ask
good
God to pick him
advice.
out." But yeah, I was like, because you don't know. Nobody knows what somebody will be like in 20 or 30 years. It's just,
No,
you don't know.
you don't. Well, this is so, so valuable. I hope that the moms listening have received some, inspiration and some just hope and guidance because it's a hard job raising daughters. Where can they find you if they want to, kind of look up? I know you have lots of awesome resources on your website.
Great. Yes, I have a website that is karikampakis.com. And then I also post, I'm pretty active on Instagram. And then I have a Facebook writer page, and that's usually where I share new articles and blog posts. And that's just Kari Kampakis writer. And then you can find the books anywhere books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Target. There's this book for moms, and then there's also these 2 books for teen girls that I wrote before this book.
Yes. And um, we'll have all the links on the show notes. And I wanted to just tell you, then I was going through your website and yesterday, and I sent your article that you wrote about, I think it was 25 things that girls in college should know.
Oh, yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I sent that to my daughter. So
Oh,
thank you
good.
so much, Kari, for just being on the show. I would love to have you back next year. We can talk college mom to college mom.
Yes, you can advise me. I'm all ears.
Yes, yes. So everybody get the book if you have a teenage daughter at home. I'm telling you, I read this book so quick. And the other cool thing about it is if you want to do it with a group of moms, there are questions after every chapter. So some really good discussion questions or just questions you can ask yourself. So definitely check that out. Also, speaking of books, just for everybody listening, a reminder that we did start a book club on the show for my newest book, Purpose Over Possessions. And what I'm going to do is every week for everybody that does a review of the show, I'm going to draw a name and send you a free copy. So make sure you do leave a review. If you really enjoyed the show today with Kari, make sure you tell us about it, comment, or shoot us an email. And thank you again, Kari. Best of luck, blessings, and love to you and your daughters. And just, I pray that God, helps you along the way. And I just thank you for being a blessing to all the moms that have read this book and have listened to the show today.
Well, I love getting to chat with you, Jennifer. So thank you for having me and letting me share with your listeners. This was a treat.
Absolutely. Take care, mamas. We'll be back again next week.